Hello and welcome to Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro. We have another very special interview to get you to, but before that, let's take a look at what's happening around the league. March Madness is in full effect still, as the Elite Eight is set and not a single one seed remains. This will be the third time in tournament history that there was a Final Four without featuring a single one seed, as Purdue, Kansas, Houston, and Alabama have all been bounced before the Elite Eight. I take a look at this and it begs the question, with the rise of name, image, and likeness deals in college sports, have we seen the end of the Cinderella in the NCAA tournament? Because Fairleigh Dickinson matched up well with Purdue, and San Diego State handled Alabama. Houston got crushed by Miami. Princeton made the Sweet 16 while barely breaking a sweat. FAU is in the Elite Eight for the first time in program history. Creighton, as a 6th seed, is in. Before name, image, and likeness, or NIL, players had to go to Duke, to North Carolina, to Houston, to Kansas, Kentucky, to get the exposure, to get the coaching, to get everything they felt they needed to get to the next level. Same with college football. Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson dominated for years. And now, as we look in college football, with the playoff expanding from 4 teams to 12 teams, if that had happened this year, we would have seen Tulane make the playoff field. And now you look at March Madness, where it seems harder and harder to make your bracket because upsets were prevalent in this tournament. And I hesitate to call them upsets at this point because I think we're seeing the end of the true Cinderella team, the end of the George Mason that came out of nowhere, the end of Loyola Chicago, the end of UMBC. Because as we saw, Fairleigh Dickinson became the second 16 seed ever to upset a 1, and Princeton as a 15 got all the way to the Sweet 16. I think we're seeing the end of the true Cinderella because the NIL deals have evened the playing field. Now players can go wherever they want to play. They felt before like they had to go to Kentucky and they'd end up sitting on the bench. And now they can go to FAU, Miami, Memphis. They can accept that Ivy League spot because Ivy League teams are not pushovers. They can go to Kansas State. They can stay home. They can look for that starting spot, not necessarily that star team, because they can still get noticed and they can now make the money that they need to make for their families or whatever the reason be. So I think as this tournament concludes and as next year winds up in the tournament, it'll be harder and harder to make a decent bracket. It'll be harder and harder to pick those top seeds because the top seeds don't have the advantage that they used to. It's no longer one seeds versus everybody else. The whole field is in play, more so than it's ever been in college sports. There's still no deal for Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, as the Packers believe the Jets are lowballing them on compensation for Aaron Rodgers, as that's the only holdup before the trade can be completed, and the Packers believe they're not getting enough from the Jets for Aaron Rodgers. So as of now, Aaron Rodgers is still a Packer, and the longer this goes, there's speculation that this deal won't work out at all. And if the deal doesn't work out at all, because Aaron Rodgers has already said that he plans to play for the Jets, will he retire if the trade falls apart? Because he said he went into his darkness retreat 90% retired and came out wanting to play for the Jets. If that deal doesn't happen, does Aaron Rodgers retire a Packer? Time will tell. What is happening with the Dallas Mavericks? Since trading for Kyrie Irving to pair with superstar Luka Doncic, the Mavericks are under 500. Because if the season ended today, they would be out of the play-in and not in postseason basketball at all. I'm starting to wonder, is it Luka? Is it Kyrie? Or is it Dallas Mavericks ownership? Because let's take a step back here. Dallas has had a superstar centerpiece for 25 straight years. They drafted Dirk Nowitzki in 1998. He stayed with them every year of his career. And then he overlapped for 1 year with Luka Doncic. So for every year since 1998, Dallas has had that superstar centerpiece. And on multiple occasions, that superstar centerpiece has played alongside another all-star. For Dirk Nowitzki, it was Steve Nash for a period of time. It was Jason Kidd. For Luka, it's now Kyrie Irving. And in 25 years, Dallas has made several playoff appearances, but they only made it to 2 finals, and they only won one of those. So is it the superstar? Or is it the ownership? Is it the GM? Is it the coaches that can't figure out how to build a winning team? Because if you look at teams that actually win the championship, it's not just 1 or 2 players. It's 12 to 15 guys playing their role. Look at the team that won the championship for the Dallas Mavericks in 2011. Dirk Nowitzki, J.J. Barea, Corey Brewer, Caron Butler, Tyson Chandler, Jason Kidd, Jan Mahimi, Sean Marion, Deshaun Stevenson, Jason Terry, Peja Stojakovic. This was an entire roster built to win. And that is the only time in the 25 years that Dallas has had a superstar that they've gotten it done. They made it to the finals in 2006, but they lost to Dwayne Wade, Shaquille O'Neal, and the Miami Heat. So in 25 years of the Dallas Mavericks having a superstar, from Dirk Nowitzki to Luka Doncic, they've made it successfully to the playoffs, but they haven't made it that far. When you look at their roster now, their third best player probably is Tim Hardaway Jr. It was probably supposed to be Christian Wood, but he probably hasn't played up to what they expected they were getting when they traded for him from the Rockets. I look at the Dallas Mavericks and I see an inability to build a complete team that can go far in the playoffs, with the exception of the 2 finals appearances and 1 finals victory. So what's wrong in Dallas? I don't think it's Luka. I don't think it's Kyrie. I think bigger changes need to be made. But we have a very special interview today. I sat down a few days ago with professional basketball player in Belgrade, Serbia, Beau Beech, for FMP Meridian. And we talked about his journey from small-time college basketball to the NBA Summer League to overseas. And what a journey it's been for Beau. And we talked about the sports world, and we talked about a lot of coincidences, and we realized the sports world is a lot smaller than we thought. Check it out right here. All right, this is Empire Sports Talk with Roman Gennaro. Thank you so much to Beau Beech for joining the podcast today.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me to Empire Sports Pod, and hopefully y'all enjoy it.
And we have Beau on today, as Beau is currently playing professional basketball in Belgrade, Serbia, and he's been a well-traveled veteran to this point in his career. So Beau, let's jump right in. To start off, let's walk us through your basketball journey to this point.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I'm playing professionally now, but that was always the goal. That was always the dream, to be a professional basketball player since I was probably 5-6 years old. My dad was my high school coach, but when I was obviously that young, he was coaching high school basketball. So I pretty much grew up in the gym. I would go to practice with him all the time. I'd obviously go to a bunch of games, whenever my mom would let me, because it was too late on a school night sometimes to go to a game. But yeah, pretty much from about 5 years old up until now I'm 29, I've been in the basketball gym pretty much every day for a lot of those days in my life. So basketball is definitely a family thing for us Beaches. And that's kind of where it started, just my dad being the coach. It kind of gave me the opportunity to be in the gym and fall in love with the game. And, up until high school, my dad taught me everything I knew about basketball: shooting, dribbling, passing, etc. So, I was lucky enough to play for my dad in high school at Ponte Vedra High School. So that was a really unique experience, playing for your dad. Some people say they hate it, but for me, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was awesome. My dad and I, he's my best friend, really. I mean, we talk about everything on the court, off the court. So to me, it was great having my dad as a coach. But I mean, there was a few few car rides home, after a bad game where, you try to get all the way to the side of the window, get as far away as you can. But
For sure.
I mean, to me, that's just part of what it is. I wasn't too worried about it. I loved it. Um, and we had a good high school career. I thought my dad and I. When I was 8 years old, he won the state championship for the first time as a head coach, and I was there at the game, and I remember him winning the game, and it was just like, man, I want to play for my dad and win a state championship with my dad. Um, Unfortunately, I was not nearly good enough to provide that experience, but we did have a chance to win some games. We won the district championship, which is not a huge accomplishment but for him and I, it felt like a huge accomplishment just, to celebrate that moment together, father and son, knowing that after that championship, that was my senior year, that I would be going to the University of North Florida to continue playing basketball. I had been recruited by probably 20 different schools at the Division I level. So I had a good little variety of, low major schools all throughout the country. And I never thought I would go to UNF because I had gone to UNF to watch them play JU a few times. I was like, oh, like it's cool, but like I'm never gonna stay this close to home. Like I grew up in Ponte Vedra, so it was a 20-minute car ride to get to UNF Arena. I was like, I'll never go this close to home. So UNF was almost like I'll see the school, I'll listen to them, but I don't think I'm actually gonna go there. But my dad and my mom, they went on every visit with me, um, just to kind of keep it short. And at the end of it, we all sat down and were like, the best school for me, personally and academically, and then mixing in the basketball and my future goals of, like I said earlier, becoming a pro, and not just a pro, was going to the NBA. Um, we thought that UNF gave me the best chance to achieve all those goals. So that was kind of a full circle moment of, I don't want to go to UNF. Actually, you know what? I really want to go to UNF. That's the best place for me. And it was the best decision of my life to go to UNF. So that's kind of the journey
That's excellent.
up through college, at least.
And we'll touch on the rest of your journey in a minute, but
Yeah.
while we're kind of standing in the college area, I want to give our
Mhm.
listeners kind of a rundown of who you were as a player. So,
Okay.
man, you played. Did you play all 4 years at UNF? Right, you played 4 years.
Yep. Yep. Four
Okay,
years.
so in that time, Beau Beech finished second all time in scoring, third all time in field goals made. You're tied first all time in 3-pointers made. Um, you're third all time in rebounds, first all time in steals, and second all time in games played, games started, and minutes.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so Beau Beech is no slouch, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a fun
Well,
fact. Can you guess? This shouldn't be too hard. In scoring, games played, games started, and minutes, can you guess who you're second to? It's all the same person.
yeah, I can guess. The legend, the GOAT himself, the Dallas Moore.
Your teammate, Dallas Moore,
Yep.
who I believe himself is playing internationally now.
He sure is. He's in Russia now
Didn't I just
playing.
see that he won the All-Star Game 3-point contest in Russia?
Yes,
He
he did. Yeah.
didn't that
He
just
had the
happen?
Steph Curry. All
Okay, okay. And let's see if you get this one. As I
right.
said, you are tied first all time in 3-pointers made. Do you know who you're tied with?
I sure do. And the reason I know is because he gives me a hard time about it every summer when we play golf together. And that's Parker Smith, because he says he did it in 3 years. Took me
PS3, as he's
four.
known around UNF. PS3, as he's
Exactly.
known. Yeah.
The original, the inventor of Birds of Trey, PS3, Parker Smith.
And I got to see Parker a little bit. Did you overlap with Parker, or was he the year
Yeah.
before? Okay.
I got one season with Parker, which I can attribute a lot of my success, I think, at UNF to Parker. And because of Parker, he was a great mentor, teacher to me. And it was someone I looked up to. Parker was the best player at UNF at the time. And I was like, hey, every player wants to be the best player at the school they go to. So I was definitely looking up to him, and maybe he didn't like it so much because I was that freshman kind of following him around too much. But Parker definitely helped me out a lot. So I appreciate everything he did for me, and we're still great friends to today.
So I think it's safe to say, Beau, that you are one of the best players to ever come through the University of North Florida. And the University of North Florida is very glad that you chose to stay home instead of going to some of those other low major schools.
Well, I appreciate it. That's a lot of high praise. I'm just happy to be a part of the team and to have the opportunity to be considered with those other greats. So I'll take it, and I'm honored.
Speaking of, since we're talking about UNF, you had 4 great years there. What is your favorite college memory from playing for UNF?
Roman, I think you're gonna know this is a pretty easy one right here.
Oh yeah.
2015, at home at UNF Arena on ESPN, playing for the ASUN championship game, eventually winning the ASUN championship and punching our ticket to the big dance, the tournament for the first time in school history. I guess this is the funny part about this story. Obviously, the whole day, right? The most memorable day, most memorable game, most memorable everything. I don't remember anything from the game. I don't remember people storming the court. I don't remember taking pictures with people. I don't remember a darn thing about the day other than UNF won and went to the tournament. It was almost, I had too much adrenaline.
I remember it.
Too much craziness.
Sure.
I think I blacked out, blacked out from adrenaline for like 4 hours, and I just don't know what happened. So it's kind of weird to say my most memorable day is probably a day that I don't have really any memory of other than we won. I just know we won.
I mean, that's the important part. And I have a friend that was at that game, and because I was not lucky enough to be in attendance at that game, but I had a friend that was at that game, and he turned on his camera, his video as he stormed the court, and when he got to mid court in that crowd, he drops his phone, and it was recording the whole time, and so we saw everything, that he drops his phone while on record, so you just see this masked confusion from ground level, and it was so funny.
I can only that's the definition of a mosh pit right there. Goodness
absolutely.
gracious.
And he's got it on camera. So
that's a memorable moment right there.
Exactly. So you sauntered beautifully into my next question. In 2015, you won the ASUN championship, and in a one bid conference, you got the right to represent the ASUN in the 2015 NCAA tournament.
Yep.
It was a short ride, but I'm sure it was a memorable one. So what is your favorite memory from that whole NCAA tournament experience?
Like you said, it was short. Being in the play-in game, we felt like we had a great opportunity to say that we won a NCAA tournament game. Not necessarily one, but it was a pride thing to be like, hey, look, we played 2 NCAA tournament games possibly if we can win this first one, and then we would have been to play the eventual national champions Duke. So it's like, all right, this is kind of a tall task, but just the trip in itself is one of those things where you see how many people were supporting UNF and supporting the team, and just the genuine happiness people had for us players and coaches and just everyone that was around and involved in the team. Just the support, because obviously I had seen the support at our games. It was everyone coming to the games, thousands of people, and you really feel it. But then you go to a different city, state, gym, and there's, you see the local reporters, you see the Spinnaker person there, and you're like, wow, they're still like interested in what's going on with us. Like we're kind of, we're affecting people's lives like in the UNF community. And that's what really stuck out to me, was just how influential that was for the school, because I didn't really know how it would affect us in the moment. It was just always a goal. And you don't think about the outcome once you achieve the goal. You just think, I want to achieve the goal. So to have that support up in Dayton in the first 4 game was it was so awesome, man. Like it really made you feel like this basketball thing is so much bigger than basketball. And that was really, I think, the first time I'd ever experienced that, because, I was kind of in my bubble in high school and going to UNF. We didn't have a track record of NCAA tournaments and success like that. So for it to blow up like it did, it just made it feel just wow. Like we really did something that people are going to remember and want to talk about, like you and I are. Like this is something that's meaningful. And it was, I mean, that's one thing I'll never forget because of that. But to be more of like a activity or an experience thing at the tournament, the best part was we got to fly on a private plane up to Dayton. So that
Beautiful.
was pretty awesome. You know, you go to the tarmac at the airport, you get off the bus. It's like TSA pre-check, but like even more like, oh yeah, you're good. Just get on the plane. You're good. Get on the plane. There's food waiting for you, and it's this huge plane, and there's like 40 of you on the plane, so everyone has their own row, just sleeping, and direct flight right to the city. And it's like, wow, we can get used to this, guys. We need to win some more games.
For a small school like UNF in a one bid conference, for a lot of those guys, I'm sure it was like the first time you felt like a big deal, right?
100%, exactly. And it tied into, like I said before, just like who was there supporting us and whatnot. It made it feel like we were a big deal, and we didn't really expect that or want that to be the case. You know, it was more of just, oh, we did what we wanted to do, and now all these people, you can tell they wanted us to do the same thing, and we're cheering for us and rooting for the same outcome. So that's when it was like, wow, this is a big deal, man. This is cool.
Yeah. In all that confusion of being interviewed by reporters and the Spinnaker, do you remember a certain person interviewing you?
This is going to sound really stuck up. Not necessarily. I know. I'm sorry. I don't.
It was me.
Sound bad,
yeah,
but
it was me. It was me.
It sounds bad, Roman, because that weekend that we won the tournament and the week of, and then at Dayton, every day, Coach Driscoll, Dallas, me, DeMarcus Daniels, or Chris Davenport, we were on a different TV show or a different radio host every day. And I was like, I don't understand.
For sure, man.
I'm really sorry. I feel like
no, you're good. You're good. I'm
stuck up person right now, Roman.
I'm just messing with you, man. I'm just messing with you.
No, it's fair, but that was one of the reasons I didn't understand the gravity of what we had done until that week and that trip. And I was like, wow, this is really different than I thought it was going to be, because it's UNF. I was thought it's UNF. That's not how it is for a school like us.
Right.
And sorry, Roman.
And
you have to bring up the transcripts.
I did. To this day, it's still the only trip to the tournament for UNF. And speaking of the tournament, as a one bid conference as the Atlantic Sun is, were you aware of it at the time, or have you thought about it now? Because a few years prior to you guys going as a 16 play-in team, Florida Gulf Coast brought Dunk City into the conversation, and then this year as a 15, and then this year Kennesaw State nearly took down, who was that yesterday? Xavier as a 14. Mm-hmm. So do you think, or have you thought about it since? Was there a little bit of, let's call it, intrigue as to why a team like Gulf Coast got a 15 and Kennesaw got a 14, and you guys had to earn your way in as a 16?
Yeah, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. At the time when we saw the seeding, I don't want to say we were disappointed, but I thought that we would have been higher. I thought we would have gotten the 15 seed like Florida Gulf Coast had that season. But I mean, we had a few bad losses in there, so I get it. Even though we did beat Purdue, who was, I think, an 8 or a 9 seed that year in the tournament. So you kind of look at our resume and it says, look, you know, we can beat a middle of the pack team in the tournament. So yeah, I would say we were a little disappointed because we thought we'd be higher, but at the same time, we also saw the opportunity, like I mentioned earlier, to say, look, we have a chance to play maybe 2 NCAA tournament games at least. But you know what I mean? Win the first game, and then you get another chance to play a game. So it wasn't something that was stuck on our mind that much. I think now that, you know, 7-8 years removed from it, it's something that me and DeMarcus Daniels joke about a lot.
It's something you think
We're
about.
like, yeah, dude, we should have been a 12 seed. We were so good that year. We should have been a 12. Like, you know, we say ridiculous things.
I mean,
but
that's fair. I think 12 is a bit of a reach because I was trying to explain seating to someone the other day. And 12 is a 13 is about as high as you can get.
I would agree.
Or it's about the lowest that someone who didn't win
other tournament can get in.
Another tournament from a major conference can be. So that so that 13 to 16 is kind of where all the smaller schools, as it were, sit. And so, but you're right, and I remember feeling this way too. That at the time, Florida Gulf Coast kind of set that precedent. Like, okay, we should be a 15.
Exactly, I agree.
And so I definitely believe that you guys were within your right to feel a little bit pushed to the side, and especially now with Kennesaw State as a 14 taking Xavier to the brink yesterday. I think it's a fair question to be like, hey, did you guys feel like you kind of got the short end of the stick having to play Robert Morris and losing in such a hard fought game?
Yeah. I mean, you can look back and debate it a lot, and I agree with your point. Is we had the chance to be there and be a 15, because the conference too, if you remember, also had Mercer beat Duke the year after Dunk City, and Mercer was a 14 seed.
Correct.
Now, both of their records were a little better than ours, 2 or 3 more wins. Maybe that's the difference. I don't know, but I thought, we were close enough to those two teams level wise. We had actually beaten Mercer twice that year, the year they beat Duke. And then the year Dunk City happened, they had lost to Mercer the next year. And then the year after that was our season, and we won, and we beat them twice. And they had a lot of those same players. So it was like, hey, look, we're not chopped liver either. But, sometimes you get the short end of the stick, but that Robert Morris game you mentioned, I think we let that one get away. We should have had the win. We didn't have a very clean second half, to say the least.
Fun fact about that Dunk City team, their point guard is a high school classmate of mine.
Oh, at Winter Park. You and Comer?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we were in the same year.
Nice.
So
he's coaching at Stetson.
Exactly. He's doing great. I'm trying to get him on the pod as well, but and obviously Austin Rivers was also a high school teammate.
Yeah, he was there too.
So he went from nationally televised with Austin Rivers to nationally televised with Dunk City.
He was a household name there for pretty much 4 or 5 years straight. Everyone knew Brett Comer.
And it was crazy for our high school to be like, we obviously by that time Austin was
he was so big.
Had gone to Duke and gone to the NBA, but like for somebody else on that team to make some noise, it was like, oh my gosh,
And from like that area too, I don't know if Winter Park's ever had that level of success basketball wise.
Not unless your last name is Rivers.
I don't think they have after.
Not unless your last name is Rivers, because I know Spencer, Austin's younger brother,
Spencer,
his younger brother, made a little bit of noise in high school, but never reached the level that Austin or even his oldest brother Jeremiah did.
That's right, Jeremiah Rivers too.
Because Jeremiah played for a bit at Indiana.
Yes, he did.
And
right.
So that family, actually the Rivers family is now forever connected to the Curry family, which is kind of cool because
it is.
Because Callie Rivers married Seth.
Yeah. Exactly.
But anyway, so you guys went to the 2015 tournament, and that was obviously this big thing. You played for 4 years under quite a personality, and the world got a taste of it in 2015 with that interview that went viral. And he has since had more funny interviews, like he had one earlier this year when UNF played Pitt, because he's from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
What's something you learned from head coach Matthew Driscoll?
Well, I mean, like you said, he's a personality for sure. I've learned a ton from him on the court, off the court, how to become a man, how to handle life as a pro, how to handle life as a husband. I mean, you name it, he's taught me something in the subject. So it'd be tough to say what one specific thing he has taught me, because I like to think that every day there's probably a decision that I'm making that's been influenced by what Coach Driscoll has taught me. And the decision can be on the court, off the court, etc. He is as genuine a guy as it gets. He doesn't mess around with words. He lets you know exactly how it is, how it's perceived, how it's going, and what's going to happen. So I respect that. I mean, sometimes it wasn't the best film sessions with him after a game, and hearing Beau, this is everything you did last night was wrong. It's like, okay, that's not always fun to hear, those tough film sessions, but obviously, like we just mentioned, winning the championship, it kind of is worth it. The 20 minutes of feeling down on yourself and bad about yourself, but then Coach Driscoll also being like, hey, look, tomorrow you can fix it all and just do all those things right, and we'll never talk about it again. And that's one of those things where it's, I guess, the number one thing that I really learned and that I definitely use daily, mainly for basketball, is just do the next right thing.
Right.
So whatever it may be, just do the next right thing. I know they got words and banners up all over the locker room and in the facilities at UNF Arena of do the next right thing. And it sounds cliche, because I'm sure it probably sounds like it is. But if you can, at least for me, I guess I bought into it. It just resonated with me. I'm not sure why or how, but it did. And just knowing that, hey, one mistake doesn't lead to two, you're probably going to have a good day. And that's the goal every day. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned from Coach Driscoll.
That fits right into a kind of a mantra that I try to hold. Being such a baseball fan as I am, and there being so many games in a baseball season, and then playing it every single day, sometimes it's not going to go your way. Sometimes you're gonna lose more games than you're gonna win. But one of the reasons that I love baseball, and one of the reasons I love sports, is that, especially during tournament time in basketball, is that anybody can beat anybody on any given day. And so one of the things that I kind of try to live by is, today, as it relates to baseball, like, any day could be the day that you start a long winning streak, and not just in sports, but in life. So I try to live by that mantra of, today's a good day to go 1-0.
It's great mantra.
So that seems like it fits right in with Coach Driscoll. Do you remember that viral interview? You remember what he said?
Ballers are ballers, dudes are dudes.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And
ballers make plays, dudes are dudes. Yep. Oh, that still gets played.
It's hilarious. I mean,
it's been 8 years and it still gets played on tournament telecasts.
It's just what I know everyone heard what Coach said, and they're like, did he really say that? Because I hear it still, and we joke about it in like our UNF group chats, and it's like, ballers are ballers, man. Dudes are dudes. It's just what happens. It's just life. Like, he said it so casually. He had never said that before, ever, to anyone. Like, he was in the zone. You know what I mean? He was, whatever came to his head was coming out of his mouth, and there was no stopping him.
The coach interviews are definitely one of the unsung highlights of the tournament every year.
Definitely.
Like, I think Fairleigh Dickinson's coach had a funny interview last night. He was like, "Oh,
sure
man,
did.
what the heck?" But
the more film I watch of Purdue, the more I think we can beat them.
Right.
So, whoa. All right.
Oh,
there
man.
you go.
Okay. But so we've spent a lot of time talking about UNF, and then you spent some time after UNF you went to the summer league for the NBA, and then you went to the D League.
Yep.
And then you kind of transitioned to international ball. You've played in Germany, in Greece, in Serbia, and obviously, the G League was in different cities, and I believe at that time the summer league was still in Vegas. So you have in your 8-9 years as a pro, 7 years, have been around, have traveled quite a bit. What's a good travel story you have from all that time that you've spent?
So, I've been to quite a few places in the world to play basketball, and I'm not mad about it. That's for sure. But oh man, there's a few good stories. I'll start in the G League. I think I got one for basically every continent I've been to. So in the G League, it was my second year, and I was in Erie, Pennsylvania. And for those that don't know about Erie, Pennsylvania, it is on Lake Erie, as far north in Pennsylvania as you can get. You're like almost up into New York border. Across the lake is Toronto. So like that's how far north you are. And it snows like there's no tomorrow there. I mean, all winter long is only snow. And there's these things that happen there that are called snow effects or lake effects. I think it was lake effects. And being from Florida, like we have no idea how to handle snow, you and I, Roman. So it's like,
For sure.
I hear, hey, we have a lake effect coming in overnight. I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, I don't even know what that means. So I'm
And then
in
you wake up, it's
Jacksonville.
in a whole new world.
Exactly. But to preface that, I'm in Jacksonville. I had I was actually coming back from a knee injury and I was waiting to fly back to Erie, Pennsylvania with the team. So I was just like, hey, I'm ready. Knee's all good. Just tell me when to just book the flight and come up. And they're like, oh, well, actually, there's a lake effect coming in. So we'll let you know when the runway is clear so you can fly in. I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. And maybe the flight will be delayed. No big deal. Well, the lake effect happens. There's 52 inches of snow over like 30 hours in Erie, Pennsylvania. So because there was so much
Wow.
snow in such a short amount of time, they couldn't even get in Erie. It's a really small city. They couldn't even get the like snow plows out from where they were because they had been built up with almost 5 feet of snow around them. So no one could get to the snow plows to clear the snow plows to clear the roads. So I was stuck in Jacksonville for like an extra 10 days waiting for the snow to melt so that they could shovel everything so that flights could come into Erie. So I was in Jacksonville for 10 extra days just waiting to go back to Erie and be like, all right, well, I don't know what to do. I'm just waiting here. And the team's like, yeah, we can't even get to practice. We're not doing anything. Like, we'll let you know when we get a flight and all this stuff. So
Um,
they flew me up to Erie 10 days later than it's supposed to be. It was nuts.
I'm sure having played now in Germany and Serbia, that a lake
Yeah.
effect is like no big deal, right?
That's the thing. Now that I've been in Europe, I've played in Germany, Poland, and Serbia. So I've seen snow at all three places, had to deal with it. I wouldn't say I'm very good at handling snow personally, but I know what to do now. But I'm not happy about it. That's for sure.
That's the thing. Like you could be around something your entire life, unless you're like from Minnesota or the
Yeah.
lake or the Lake Erie area. You could be around something your whole life and still not be good at it. Like in Florida,
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of rain, and yet
Yes.
Florida drivers are still bad at driving in the rain. Like
Every day on 95, there's an accident because of the rain. Every day.
exactly. So you've played at a lot of different levels. You've played
Mhm.
Summer League, G League,
Yeah.
internationally, and college ball on a big stage. For those that don't know, because I admittedly don't know a lot about international ball, what would you say the main difference is between something like the G League,
Hmm.
college, and international basketball?
Yeah.
What would you say fundamentally are the differences?
Just on the surface level, just the physicality of each level, it goes up a lot and it goes up fast. Um, if you think about it, in high school, you play against kids that are about 4 years older than you, no older, right?
Right.
College, same thing, about 4 years older than you. But once you turn professional,
It
you
could
could
be
play
anybody.
against someone. Yeah, it could be anyone. You can be 22 like I was as a rookie, and I wouldn't say my body at 22 was fully developed. I've probably put on probably about 10 to 15, maybe 20 pounds of muscle since I graduated college. So if you look at it like that, I'm 29 now, and it took me 7 years, 6, 7 years to put on 20 more pounds of muscle. So as a 22-year-old playing against a 29-year-old, that's a big difference. And the experience factor of playing way more years, seeing a lot of different situations, I mean, the physicality is different. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it and your body gets a lot more fatigued, a lot more tired, a lot more sore, especially after games, after practice, because you're not used to it. So the biggest difference from America to Europe is the physicality, but even just from level to level, the physicality is, yeah, it's the big adjustment, especially for, someone like me. I'm not like a big guy. I mean, I'm 6'8", but
I
I'm
mean,
only like 200,
that's pretty big.
relatively for basketball. You know what I mean?
Right. No, exactly.
I mean, I'm like 6'8", 220, 225, fluctuate in there. But I mean, there's plenty of 6'8", 6'9", 250 guys that I'm playing against. And it's like, well, this guy is way bigger than me.
Right.
So his level of physicality is a notch above mine, even. So, that would lead to the next biggest difference is just like knowledge of the game at each level. Because, like I said, you're 14 to 18 in high school, you're kind of learning the game still. 18 to 22, it's a little more in depth, but it's still not that highest level yet. And then you turn professional, and instantly you're playing with, like for me, I went to Brooklyn Nets training camp at 22 years old, thinking I knew everything there was about basketball. And on day one, I'm sitting in the locker room next to Randy Foy, who at the time I think was 30 or 31, maybe 32. And that's a 10-year age gap right there. And that's 10 years of him playing in the NBA.
Right.
And it's like, I know nothing about basketball.
Right.
And I have to play against this guy today. Like, I'm screwed. Basically, was the mentality is like, wow, this is a whole nother level of how people think and process the game, play by play. Heck, even dribble by dribble, they're thinking 2-3 moves ahead of what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what's going to be the outcome. So physicality and then knowledge, 1A and 1B, and the difference for sure.
One thing that I've noticed, and you can course correct and kind of tell me where the game lies in Europe between these two things, is the NBA is so focused on the 3-pointer and because of players like Steph Curry, and there's less defense because it's so offensive focused. And then you watch college basketball around this time of year, and they still play a lot of defense. It's still very physically a defensive game. Get in their face, cut them off, drive to the basket. So there's a pretty wide gap right now between where college basketball is and where the NBA is, as far as physicality, as far as defense, as far as all that stuff. Where do you think the international game fits into that?
So international is definitely the middle ground. And the reason I say that is because the skill level here in the international game is really, really, really high. Like, I can't stress how skilled everyone in Europe is. As an American, we don't watch European games, so we don't really see it every day like we see the NBA. So we know how skilled the NBA is. But every team out here in Europe has someone that was one step away from making the NBA, or was on an NBA roster, or went to training camp, or was like, every team has that level player on their team. So yeah, maybe it was size or athleticism or strength that they couldn't get to the NBA, but they come to Europe and they're so skilled, the players. And I guess the difference is the athleticism. The NBA has the top level athletes. There's no denying it. And in Europe, you don't see as many of those top level athletes. So because of that, it's kind of an in-between of the college level, where you see defense is super prevalent. You see a game like Fairleigh Dickinson and Purdue 58 to 63. Like, you don't get games like that in Europe. The games are in the 80s. The games are in the 90s. It's not 130 like the NBA, but that's for some other reasons. But it's like the skill level is, people are scoring at a high level,
so
and are able to score.
It's got much more of an 80s, 90s NBA vibe, you would say,
not even like, like Bird and Magic, they played fast and fast paced, and they scored like 90 to 100 points. It's like that era is kind of how the style is. Everyone's really smart. Everyone has the fundamentals down perfectly. Just the pace, no one can play at the pace that like Giannis plays at, because no one's 7 foot and freakishly athletic in Europe,
Right.
for the most part. They would be in the NBA if they were.
So you mentioned obviously the players in Europe being really, really good, and then you mentioned Giannis. So
Yeah.
obviously, back in the day in the 80s and 90s, the international basketball, I should say, has always had a international footprint from
Yeah.
Dikembe Mutombo and Tony Kukoc in the 90s
Yeah.
to now. Obviously, some of the best players in the NBA are Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Giannis, and
Yeah.
these international players. So obviously, the international scene is getting more attention now. But how much more do you think it's grown even still when you see NBA talent like LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton choosing to play overseas for a year instead of going to the NCAA, or players, all-stars like Dwight Howard playing overseas, or Carmelo Anthony mulling the decision to play overseas. How much bigger has the international scene gotten from?
It's a great question. It's a great question.
Yeah.
And the answer is it's blown up. I mean, I think most people in America would say even the NBA has become a bigger, more popular game in the last 20 years. And the international game is the same way. There's new teams are being formed daily, out here for the next season and upcoming, because people realize there's so many kids playing basketball now, because you look, every corner of the world has an NBA basketball superstar in it that kids can look up to and try to be. And there's like 8 billion people in the world. So like there's so many people that want to aspire to be a basketball player. And like you mentioned, you have kids in China like getting to watch former NBA players play, and like they're like, wow, I remember Carmelo Anthony. Like he was so good for the Nuggets and the Knicks and all that stuff. And they're like, I want to be like him. So you have that. You have I'm in Serbia now. Nikola Jokic is,
The guy.
he might as well be God himself out here. You know what I mean? But everyone wants to be the next Jokic. So it's just, the game is so good here.
No one can be
And
Jokic.
I think people are starting to see that now with like Luka and Jokic and Giannis coming from Europe, and Wembanyama, who's from France. He's about to be in the NBA. They see these guys like, whoa, these guys are really freaking good. Like, maybe playing in Europe, it used to be maybe a stigma of, oh, that guy's not any good at basketball. He can make the NBA to go play. They probably think semi-pro ball over here. It's like, nah, there's some really good players over here, and it's definitely not semi-pro basketball. I can tell you that.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that Jokic is like God over there, and I was going to mention it if you didn't. Like, you are in his home right now. It's as far as it's come. One of the first global superstars, you could argue, in sports was Michael Jordan.
Yes,
you'd hear people in China coming all the way from China to see Michael, and then they went to China at one point, I believe, or they went to they traveled internationally, which was one of the first times the NBA itself had gone outside the borders. And so to see now that you could make a very strong argument that the 3 best players in the NBA today, Giannis, Jokic, and Luka, are all international players.
Yeah, and you can argue that the 4th best player, Embiid, is also international.
Is from Cameroon, and then one of the best young players, Anthony Edwards, is from Canada. So,
and that's the next thing, and then you add maybe
Josh Giddey,
Australian. You can
Australian.
add a lot. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander,
exactly,
Canadian as well. Wembanyama from France.
He's coming,
He's about to be one of the top players in the NBA you expect. So I think now more people in the NBA see these international stars and realize, hey, these European players, they come from nowhere, yes, for the most part, but there's talent here. And all these guys need is a shot. And once they have their shot, it shows how good a lot of these leagues and countries are at developing their talent.
since this boom, you could argue there's been a boom in international talent the last
Mhm.
10 years or so. And for much of that time, for the last 5 years, 6 years, you've played internationally.
Yeah.
Have you seen a jump in attendance at international games since this has happened in the NBA? Maybe there's Americans that come overseas.
Mhm. Yeah. So the first 2 years I was in Germany, I think we sold out every single home game we had. I don't think there was one. I know the first season guaranteed sold out 30 home games, guaranteed. I know that. The second season, because of COVID, I'm not like 100% sure that we had sellouts because there was like limit restrictions and whatnot. But still, it was a sold out crowd every night. The gym is packed, 3,500 people every night there. Obviously, I went to Greece, and Greece was 2020, 2021. I was there. So that was still COVID era. So we had no fans at games, but Giannis won the NBA championship. So basketball was like off the charts. Anytime I turn the TV on, all they're talking about is the Greek basketball league. Who
You
won,
sir,
who lost, who played well. That's all anybody. Now, I didn't know the words they were saying, but I can read the bottom because my team name's on the bottom. So I'm like, that's my team name. I know they're talking about us. So the popularity and the excitement around the game, I don't think like the fans' perspective, I think they've had the same number of fans as they had maybe 20 years ago. I think what's really boomed is the development of the talent. I think more people are coming to Europe because they understand there is talent here and there's a lot of good coaches that are developing that talent. So now they're coming here and seeing what would seem like to an American a whole new world of players. But I think they've always kind of been doing that here in Europe. It was just on a much smaller scale than in America. Because, we kind of push the youth to do things to try to get to levels and all this kind of stuff. Here it's more of like, hey, if you make it, you make it. Good luck. Here's the resources, do what you do. And if you don't do it, you either didn't work hard enough or you didn't have the talent. And it's
Right.
kind of more of like a matter of fact way of getting the best out of a player.
I have heard that the international circuit can be not for everyone. It can be tough.
Yes. Yes.
So first of all, you have made a career of finding your way to the home countries of the biggest players in the NBA.
Yeah,
being
somehow.
in Greece and Serbia. But you're a great interview guest because you somehow managed to segue beautifully into the next question. Speaking of Hamburg, Germany.
Yeah.
That what I did. I did my homework on you before this. That
right.
was your first stop in the
Mhm.
international situation.
Yes.
You had been in the G League, you had been in Summer League, and then it comes time to go internationally, which, as we've discussed, is becoming a great option for some people. I think
Yes.
Tony Kukoc had a quote in the 90s saying something like, oh, the Bulls were interested, but I stayed in Croatia and played for a year because the money's good here too. So it's like,
Yeah.
so it's always been, it's one of those things. But so you're in Europe for the first time in Hamburg, and a lot of people don't know the way really that international games work, but you win it. You're in a league and you win a champion, and this is kind of the same thing with soccer. And in my little
Yes.
bit of research, it is similar in basketball. You win a championship and you get promoted to a league, or you finish last and you get demoted. So
Mhm.
you were in Hamburg, and it was your first time out of America. You had done the NCAA tournament. You had done the summer league and the G League, which was out of Jacksonville, so that had already taken you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But now you're in other countries, and in Hamburg. Did it help that your first international coach was an American, Mike Taylor?
1,000%. Yes. You did very good research on that. So, like you mentioned, that was my first time leaving America and playing international ball. And the main reason I left at that time to go to Hamburg was because of Mike Taylor. To make it even a crazier story, Mike Taylor knows Coach Driscoll because they're both Pittsburgh guys. So coaches from Pittsburgh, they all know each other.
That's
Mike
great.
Taylor, now's what next level. Mike Taylor moves. He had coached in Germany. He had coached in the G League. He takes a year off. He moves to Nocatee, Florida. Yeah. Get this. So he moves to Nocatee, doesn't have a coaching job there. He comes to UNF practices to see Coach Driscoll, watches our team play and practice all that stuff, follows us all. So that's 2016, 2015, 2016.
Which, for people who don't know, Nocatee, Florida is right next to Jacksonville.
It's 25 minutes away.
Right.
And not only is it 25 minutes away from Jacksonville, Coach Taylor's house is a 7-minute drive to my parents' house.
Good.
So I don't know any of this. I played my first year in the G League. I played my second year in the G League. I realized, hey, there's more money to be made in Europe. You know, the G League thing isn't going how I expected it or wanted it to go to be able to get to the NBA. So I was like, hey, let's go to Europe. My agents call me probably 2 days later. And they're like, hey, you know Mike Taylor? And I was like, name sounds familiar. They're like, yeah, he's coaching in Hamburg, Germany in the second division. And I was like, second division, guys, come on, man. What are you? This is stupid. I'm not going there. They're like, no, like they're gonna bring you in, pay you more money than you would make in the G League. And I was like, well, okay, that's a good start. And they're like, as your first job in Europe, to have an American head coach, this could be really good for you, Beau. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, that starts to make a little more sense now. Yeah. I call Coach Taylor, and the second I hear his voice, I'm like, I know exactly who this guy is. Of course, I remember Mike Taylor. He's almost like Coach Driscoll, just so positive, so energetic, you know, wears his heart on his sleeve, tells you like it is. And it's, to me, the second I talked to him, I said, yeah, I'm signing. I'm going to Hamburg,
sure.
No doubt about it. And Coach Taylor taught me so much about the international game that I needed to learn in such a short amount of time. He taught it all to me. Him and I still talk probably once a week via text. So yeah, he was a great coach for me. He taught me a ton, especially because I had no idea what I was getting myself into with like German culture, how practices are, how games are, how the referees are, how fans are. I had no idea about anything. So he really brought me along. And all the while, he's the national team coach for Poland. So not only is he teaching me about the German league, he's teaching me about the Polish league. He's teaching me about the international cups. He's teaching me about these other countries, other players on his team, the Polish national team played in. So I got like a master class of European basketball in 2 years in Hamburg. So yeah, that ended up being a really great decision and a small world coincidence that he literally is 10 minutes away from my house.
And I believe he's coaching in Canada now.
And now he's the coach of the Summer Canadian League team, the Sea Bears, or I think it's the Sea Bears. It's one of the greatest names.
I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah, a great name for a sports mascot, the Sea Bears.
You know, you got to appreciate some of these names. Minor League Baseball is known for having some great names. One of my favorites is obviously here in Jacksonville is the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, but there's a team in Vermont known as the Vermont Lake Monsters. And they have the greatest hat of all time. It's just like it's just eyes above water, and then you see like a tail. It's great.
Oh, so they're really buying into like the Lake Ness or the Lake Ness monster.
It's excellent. It's excellent. But I don't think people realize exactly how small of a world sports is sometimes, because it's so interesting to me that you mention, you know, that Coach Driscoll and Coach Taylor happened to both be Pittsburgh guys, and he happened to have a house in Nocatee, and so that's where you can play next. Because I was just talking to another former UNF athlete Joe Wilbruta, who is now the
Yeah.
amateur video like scouting guy for the Yankees, and he was talking about he started his collegiate career off at Midland Community College, which
Yeah.
community college baseball is kind of a big deal, and Midland's one of the best in the country. And so when it came time for him to go to a 4-year college, his coach at Midland used to coach in the SEC, where UNF's head baseball coach at the time also coached in the SEC at the same time. So he said, I know this guy, Smoke Laval, who's coaching in Jacksonville. That's where you're going to play next. And Joe was like, okay.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll trust you.
You know, because Joe was from Ohio,
Mhm.
and then he went to Midland in Texas, so he didn't know anything about Jacksonville, Florida. And
He
then
has no idea.
his coach knew Smoke Laval and said, "You're going to UNF." And Joe was like, "All right."
Sounds good, coach.
And
It's a
so
small world, man. Jeez.
I don't think people realize that sometimes because it's so big and it's so glamorous from the outside. You're looking at it on
Yes.
TV, you look at it in the headlines, and you're like, "Oh man, like I don't even know how to start." And then you hear these stories from you and from Joe about how you got started.
Yeah. And it's
It's
all from one person knowing the next, from somewhere
and
that's not where you finished up at.
and Coach Driscoll was a fellow assistant with Scott Drew,
I know.
who is now a national championship winning coach. And he coached
Yeah.
under Scott Drew, and which helped him get his first head coaching job with you. And so it's crazy to me that these stories prove to you just how small of a world sports can be sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because my wife even now that she's been overseas 2 seasons now with me, she even sees it. She'll be like, she'll meet a friend in whatever country you're in or on social media, and they'll be like, hey, do you know this person? Do you know that person? She'll go, oh yeah, I've been hanging out with them here in this city. And it's like the wives sports world is even smaller. They know everyone too. So
Right.
it's wild just the connections you can make all over the world.
So before we leave Hamburg, you did actually win a championship with
Yeah,
Coach Taylor
sure did.
in Hamburg in 2019. Tell us about that.
Yes, we did. Oh, it was great. It was, that was one of the selling points as well before signing there was that, the second division to me felt like, why would I play in the second division? I'm a better player than that. But the team had goals to win the league that first year. And Coach Taylor, obviously, I trusted his word on that. And, we were building for that all season to get to the playoffs and be one of the top 2 teams to get promoted to the top German league. And, it was a wild ride. I'll tell you that. I mean, there were some points in the season like, man, there's no way we're going to get this done. And then there's other points in the season like, there's no chance we'll lose to anyone. And it was kind of one of those things where, because every team is fighting for that promotion, no one wants to stay in the second division. So it was a real competitive league. And the best part about it is in the championship series, the final series, Aaron Bodiger flew out and visited me in Germany. Played with us.
I was going to say, I know that name. Yeah.
Yep. Played with us at UNF on the championship teams. And he was 1 year behind me because he redshirted. But he came out and visited me. And then 3 days later, my parents came out and visited me. So I had Aaron, my mom, and my dad all at the championship series, the final series to get promoted. And Aaron's in the locker room with me pregame at halftime, sitting on the bench during the game. And he's rushing the court after the game with us as if he was on the team with us. And my mom and dad are up in the VIP section, just drinking German beers, just celebrating, having a grand old time like nothing happened. Like, this is great. It was incredible. It was an incredible 10 days with those people there to celebrate something like that. I mean, it was fun.
So you've been blessed up to this point. I mean, you could say like your first international coach is an American coach that your college coach happened to know, and then you win a championship, and your parents are there, and one of your good friends from college is there. I mean, it's
nuts.
It's crazy.
Storybook, Roman. It's really storybook. my first year in Europe. It was storybook.
No, exactly. So we've touched just a couple more questions. We've touched on some of the highlights of your career already from the NCAA tournament to, and I see you're wearing the North Florida. You're
That's
repping
right.
North
Got a
Florida
rep.
today. Yeah, exactly. You've been to the NCAA tournament. You've played against some NBA guys before, and you've won a championship in Germany. What's your favorite memory overall as a player? If you had to
You
single
know,
out one thing.
yeah, I mean, it's not the biggest accomplishment in my career, from an outside perspective, but playing for my dad and for him and I to win that district championship together. I mean, yeah, it's not like a state championship or an international championship or an NCAA tournament bid, but to do that with my dad
Oh,
and like
sure.
him being my coach, but also my dad is just that's like my proudest moment as a basketball player. And that's a moment I'll never forget because just everything that went into that game, that season, those 4 years together with my dad as my coach, just, it just felt like we did something. And that was what we did. And it's always been like a we thing with me and my dad. Like, we are going to get to we're going to get to a Division I school. We're going to get to the NCAA tournament. We're going to get to the NBA. Like, it's always, you know what I mean? It's not me. It's like me and my dad. So for him and I to have that actual trophy together, it's like, yeah, I'll never forget that. And that's my biggest accomplishment because it was something that we were able to share and do together.
Oh, that's absolutely excellent. I love that answer. So you've had a nice long career at this point, and it's not over. So you starting from 8 years old when you see your dad win a state championship, and I'm going to play for my dad, sparking a fire for basketball in you that's lasted. You're 29 now,
Yeah.
to a professional team. I don't even think we've mentioned at this point the name of your current team, which is known popularly as FMP or FMP Meridian.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give a shout out to your current team
Appreciate it. I like it.
while we're doing this. But you don't know what's coming next for you, and whether
Yeah.
it's continuing to play for FMP, continuing to play in Serbia, or playing in another country, or maybe one of these days you'll make the NBA. Who knows?
Yeah.
But one day your playing career will be over.
Mm-hmm.
What are your goals for when that happens? Would you consider coaching like your dad? Would you want to go into broadcasting? What
Yeah.
would you want to leave the game behind? What are your goals once your playing days are over? Hopefully not for a long time.
Yeah. First off, let's hope, I got a few more years playing. Let's say at least 5 more years in the tank. But it's a good question. I would say I fluctuate. Not that I think about it daily, but whenever I do think about it, I think I change my mind every time about what it is I plan on trying to do, or like what avenue I want to explore. I can almost for certain tell you that it won't be broadcasting. I'll leave that to you, bud. I don't think I have the
from your lips to God's ears.
Yeah. I don't think I have it. I don't think I have that in me. So I'll leave that to you and the professionals. But my wife is a elementary school teacher and she can teach at a variety of different levels as well. Obviously my dad is still working in the school system, has been since the 80s, the public school system. So, I think there's days where I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely going to do something like that, a little more relaxed, kind of a typical, 9 to 5 job. But as a teacher, get summers off. I'm used to summers off with basketball, so that sounds nice in a job, having summers off every year. So,
Man,
but then again, who knows? I love basketball so much. I don't think I can just leave it behind.
yeah. Knowing you and knowing other former athletes, I don't know if you could just go and just like teach a subject at a school and not become the basketball coach.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm pretty competitive and I get fiery. So I think if I went into basketball, I would be full in. It wouldn't be a half-ass job. Sorry for the language.
Oh, you're fine.
But
What I think
yeah, I think
If
That's kind of where I don't know. I think coaching is in my future. I don't think I've figured out what level is the thing.
one thing I'm holding in my back pocket, which I just thought about this and it would crack me up. As you were talking about the relationship between Driscoll and Mike Taylor, if you got into coaching one day, it would just be too funny and would talk about being a movie, come in full circle if you ended up
Yeah.
being a coach in Pittsburgh.
No,
I'm just throwing that out there.
it's
Like,
funny you say that, and now that you say it, based on all the other coincidences that have led us to this point, that would probably be the least coincidence one of them all. You know what I mean? Me just coaching in Pittsburgh. So
yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't put anything past it. I know for a fact I would call Coach Driscoll and Coach Taylor and ask for any and all advice on how to get into coaching. And it's also funny you say about like where I'd be coaching. You might know him or remember him, Zach Friesman. He's
Yes.
our age, graduated
Yes.
from UNF in 16, basketball manager, assistant coach at Western Carolina University now.
I did see that. He's doing great.
Yeah. And since college, Freeze and I were close and joke around with him and say, when you're a head coach, call me. I'll be your assistant. Well, he's kind of on the fast track to become a head coach now. So I don't know if I'm going to have to take up that bet or that offer sooner rather than later. But, Zach, he's a determined guy and he might take me up on the offer. I don't know how seriously he took it. So I might need to kick into the coaching realm maybe faster than I expected and maybe in a city I didn't expect either. But it's, the one thing about post-career basketball for me is that like my wife stopped her teaching job in America to come over to Europe with me.
Right.
So like I'm forever grateful for that because like I mean, I think she enjoys being in Europe. It's a fun lifestyle, kind of seeing the world and traveling and playing games, and it's fun. But
But
she put her career on hold too, so I kind of owe her the decency of like, hey, you can.
letting her be
Thanks for
stable
sticking it out.
for a time, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, moving country to country, city to city. I mean, the language barriers. There's a lot of little things that kind of just maybe are annoying and things that make you miss America more and just the routine and the normalcy and seeing family and the ease of everything. So yeah, I definitely owe it to her to kind of she can pick the destination and then I'll pick my occupation.
There you go. I was gonna say, I imagine as fun as it can be a little bit isolationist because
Sometimes.
your family and your friends that you've
Yeah.
known for the longest. Obviously, you've probably made friends wherever you've gone in your basketball career, but the family and friends that you know so well are back in America. I
Exactly.
imagine.
And I mean, it's tough at times too, because you miss certain events, you miss sometimes weddings, you miss birthdays, obviously, you miss holidays, but the best thing is that Emma and I we have each other, so we make the most of it, and we've made good friends in every country we've been in, so we feel at home eventually, but it's kind of that the eventually part, you know what I mean? Day one you don't have these friends when you move to these countries
Right.
and
Do you guys make it back home in the off season for
oh
you?
yeah, we
Oh
sure
yeah.
do. Yeah, we
Excellent.
don't do Europe year round. We come home to America as soon as possible and spend as much time with family and friends because there's just really, for me specifically, there's just no time for me to travel back. And for Emma, you know, bless her heart, she feels bad when she leaves me at home by herself and she goes like back to see family or whatever. So she doesn't do that often, if ever. So
Yeah.
we're stuck together for 10 months out of the year in Europe. So it's like we stuck it out together.
Well, that's all I officially have for you, Beau. Thanks so much
Awesome.
for joining the pod. And Beau Beech of FMP Meridian in Belgrade, Serbia, joining the pod today. Thanks, Beau.
Hey man, appreciate it, Roman. Keep up the good work and give the pod a follow.
Yeah, definitely. Empire Sports Pod on Twitter, Empire Sports Talk on Instagram and Facebook, and wherever else you follow, TikTok as well. But thanks for hanging out with us, Beau. I appreciate it.
Always, man. No problem.
And that was my interview with Beau Beech. I had a great time sitting down with him. I want to thank him again for joining us here on the Empire Sports Talk podcast. I want to thank FMP Meridian in Belgrade, Serbia for letting us borrow Beau for that interview. And as you can see, the sports world is pretty small. And I wish Beau all the best. I hope great success finds him in the rest of his basketball career. Maybe we see him in the NBA again, who knows. And we'll see what he chooses as his path after he's done playing, but hopefully that's not for a very, very long time. That's all the time I have. This has been Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro. See you next time.